Respect yourself first because that is the foundation of every decision you make in life and every connection you allow into your space. And when you stop and really think about it, people treat you exactly how you treat yourself. So if you constantly downplay your own value, if you constantly laugh off your worth, if you constantly allow folks to take advantage of your kindness without setting any boundaries, then don't be surprised when that becomes the standard of how they show up for you, because you set the tone for how the world approaches you. And when you carry yourself like you're a prize, when you carry yourself like you've got something special that cannot be duplicated, then people have no choice but to see you that way, because self respect is magnetic. It attracts seriousness, it attracts commitment, and it pushes away foolishness without you having to say a single word, because the way you present yourself already announces the level you're on. It starts with how you talk to yourself, because the internal voice becomes the external lifestyle. And if you wake up every day beating yourself down, telling yourself you're not good enough, doubting your ability, questioning if anybody will really love you, then you are training yourself to expect less. But when you wake up and affirm who you are, when you remind yourself that you are worthy, when you set the mirror straight and say, I'm not lowering myself for anybody, you move into a completely different lane. And that energy shows up in the way you walk, the way you talk, the way you look people in the eye, and the way you say no when something doesn't align with the respect you have for yourself. Because no is not a weakness. No is a shield that protects you from situations that drain you. When you respect yourself first, you stop chasing people who don't see you, because deep down you know you don't need to beg for a spot in anybody's life, and you stop compromising your values for temporary attention, and you stop entertaining people who only show up when it's convenient for them, because your spirit knows the difference between love and convenience, and it refuses to settle once it learns what true value feels like. And I promise you, when you start operating from that place, the people who really see your worth will begin to gravitate towards you, and the ones who can't rise to meet your standard will quietly exit. And that is not a loss, that is protection. Respecting yourself also means controlling what you allow around you, because sometimes you can't grow into the person you're supposed to be when you are surrounded by voices that constantly belittle your vision. So you have to create space where your dreams are taken seriously and your boundaries are not just suggestions but requirements. And you have to protect your energy like it's a bank account, because every conversation, every relationship, every environment either makes deposits or withdrawals. And if you keep letting people overdraft your peace, you'll have nothing left to invest in yourself. Another piece of respecting yourself is understanding that you don't have to explain your worth to anybody, because the moment you start trying to justify why you deserve better, you've already given somebody too much power. And when you truly respect yourself, your actions speak louder than your explanations, because you won't sit at a table where you're not valued, you won't stay in a room where you're overlooked, and you won't keep fighting for somebody to treat you in a way that you can give yourself. It also means being disciplined enough to walk away when things are not serving you, because respecting yourself sometimes requires tough choices, and it hurts to let go of what you thought you wanted. But holding on to disrespect drains you far more than the pain of letting go ever could, and you'll never discover the kind of love and peace you deserve until you stop clinging to what disrespects your heart. So self-respect is the courage to say, this may hurt right now, but I refuse to keep hurting forever. The beauty of respecting yourself is that it changes everything without you even trying to change anybody else. Because people quickly realize they can't play with you, they can't half love you, they can't manipulate you because your standard does not allow it. And suddenly you find yourself in situations where you are treated with care, with thought, with honor, not because you demanded it with your words, but because you demanded it with the way you carried yourself, and the respect you gave yourself first became the blueprint for how others approach you. When you set the standard, you are telling the world exactly how to deal with you because if you don't define your boundaries, then somebody else will define them for you. And usually they won't be in your favor. So you have to understand that the power of standards is not about being arrogant. It's about being clear. It's about saying, this is who I am. This is what I accept. This is what I will not allow. And once you get firm in that, you stop being tossed around by people's moods. You stop living on the roller coaster of someone else's convenience, and you take ownership of the direction of your life because standards are like a filter. They let in what is right for you, and they push out what is not. The moment you begin setting the standard, you realize that people who are not willing to rise to it will either complain or walk away, and you have to be okay with that. Because the truth is, when somebody gets mad that you have standards, what they are really saying is they wanted the benefit of you without the responsibility of treating you right. And when you understand that, you stop taking rejection personally because it's not about your value. It's about their unwillingness to grow. So you start seeing their exit as a blessing because every person who refuses to meet your standard is simply making room for the one who will. And it becomes clear that your standards are not walls to keep love out. They are gates that protect love from being wasted. When you set the standard, you teach people how to show up in your life because the way you carry yourself is the way they will approach you. And if you don't stand firm, if you bend every time just to keep somebody close, then you are silently teaching them that they don't need to take you seriously. But when you stand tall and stick to your word, people understand real quick that you are not here to play games. You are not here to be an option. You are here because you value yourself. And the only way they get to stay connected to you is by honoring that value. It's important to realize that standards don't make you difficult, they make you clear. And clarity is attractive to people who are serious because somebody who has good intentions doesn't mind respecting your standards. In fact, they appreciate it because it gives them direction and it removes confusion. But people who just want to waste your time will always complain about your standards because without them, they would have easy access to play with you. So setting standards is not about pushing people away, it's about pulling the right ones closer. When you set the standard, you also protect your future because the choices you make today are building the life you will live tomorrow. And if you keep accepting less now, you will keep attracting less later. But when you get serious about your boundaries, when you demand respect, when you refuse to compromise your peace, your future begins to shift because you are no longer building on shaky ground. You are building on a foundation of self-worth. And from that foundation, everything else grows stronger, whether it's relationships, opportunities, or personal growth. There will always be moments where it feels tempting to lower your standard because you are tired of waiting or because you don't want to lose someone. But that is the exact moment you have to remember that lowering your standard does not keep people. It only prolongs the pain because someone who only values you when you make yourself smaller is not really valuing you. They are valuing their comfort. And once you see that truth, you find the strength to hold the line, to let go of fear, and to stand in the belief that someone willing to meet your standard is always better than someone who needs you to lower it. Setting the standard changes how you see yourself because every time you say no to what does not serve you, every time you walk away from disrespect, every time you choose patience over desperation, you are telling yourself, I am worthy of more. I am deserving of better. And that repetition builds confidence, and that confidence becomes unshakable. So by the time the right person enters your life, they won't have to guess how to treat you. They won't have to wonder what you deserve because your standard will have already written the blueprint for the respect and love you require. Don't chase, replace, because the moment you start chasing someone, you automatically put yourself in a position beneath them. And when you're running after somebody who keeps walking away from you, you're sending the message that your value is negotiable, that their attention is worth more than your dignity. But the truth is, no amount of chasing will ever make somebody love you right, because love doesn't have to be begged for. Respect doesn't have to be hunted down. And attention that is real won't disappear the moment you stop running after it. So instead of chasing people who don't see your worth, you have to shift your energy toward replacing that dead space with something better. Because life will always give you new opportunities, new people, new doors to walk through when you stop wasting time banging on the wrong ones. The reason so many people get stuck chasing is because they think if they just prove themselves enough, if they show how loyal they are, if they demonstrate how much they care, eventually the other person will wake up and realize their worth. But what usually happens is the opposite. The more you chase, the more they pull away. The more you give without balance, the more they take you for granted because human nature is wired to devalue what is easily accessed. And when you keep showing up uninvited, when you keep giving energy that isn't reciprocated, you teach the other person that they can have you without effort, and that is the fastest way to lose their respect. Replacing doesn't just mean finding a new relationship, it means replacing old habits, old patterns, old versions of yourself that tolerated less than what you deserved. Because if you don't upgrade your mindset, you'll just end up chasing a different face with the same behavior. So you have to start by replacing desperation with patience, replacing self doubt with confidence, replacing the need to be chosen with the decision to choose yourself. And when you make those inner replacements, your outer world begins to reflect that shift because you stop tolerating breadcrumbs and you start demanding the full loaf. There's a kind of peace that comes when you stop chasing because suddenly you realize that what is meant for you won't run away from you, and what constantly requires you to run after it was never really yours. And that peace allows you to stop wasting your time because chasing drains you. It wears you down. It makes you anxious, always wondering where you stand. But when you step back and stop running, you see clearly who is willing to match your energy and who disappears when you no longer do all the work. And that truth sets you free because it proves that real connection is mutual, not one-sided. The mindset of replacing instead of chasing builds strength because every time you let go of someone who doesn't value you, you create room for someone who does. And every time you close the door on disrespect, you open a door for respect. And every time you walk away from somebody who only half chooses you, you position yourself to be fully chosen. But that only happens when you stop clinging to what's not working. Because the longer you hold on to what hurts, the less space you leave for what heals. And that's why replacing is an act of faith, believing that better exists and refusing to settle for less. When you adopt this mindset, you start to see chasing as weakness and replacing as power, because it proves that you don't have to beg anyone to see your worth. You don't have to lower yourself just to be noticed. And you don't have to spend your life convincing someone to love you because your worth doesn't need convincing. It just needs recognition, and the right person will see it without you performing, without you running, without you begging, because your energy alone will be enough. The moment you stop chasing and start replacing, you walk differently, you speak differently, you carry yourself differently because your energy is no longer desperate, it's confident, and confidence is magnetic. It draws in opportunities, it draws in people who value you, it draws in respect because you've stopped wasting your time where it was never appreciated and redirected it toward building yourself. And once you're in that space, you realize that letting go was never the loss you thought it was. It was the beginning of gaining everything you actually deserve. Keep your silence powerful because sometimes the most impactful statement you can make is saying nothing at all. And when you learn how to be quiet instead of constantly explaining, defending, or pleading, you start to realize how much strength is hidden in restraint because silence makes people pay attention. Silence forces them to sit with their own actions. Silence creates space for truth to reveal itself without you pushing it. And in that stillness, you gain more control than you ever had by speaking because words can be argued with, twisted, or ignored, but silence cannot be denied. It lingers and it speaks in a language louder than any argument could. There are times when people expect you to react. They expect you to fight back. They expect you to blow up because that gives them power. It shows them they can control your emotions. But when you don't give them that satisfaction, when you simply remove your energy and keep your peace, you turn the tables because now they're the ones stuck wondering what you're thinking, what you're planning, what you're going to do next. And that mystery is powerful because silence shifts the focus back on them instead of you wasting yourself trying to prove your point. So instead of exhausting your breath, you let the weight of your absence do the talking. Silence also shows discipline, and discipline is respect for yourself because it's easy to react in anger. It's easy to talk when you're frustrated. It's easy to over explain when you feel misunderstood. But strength is in holding back, choosing when and how to speak, and realizing you don't owe everybody an answer because sometimes an unanswered question tells the truth louder than a long explanation ever could. And when you learn that skill, you stop being drained by unnecessary conversations. You stop being pulled into cycles of proving yourself, and you start keeping your energy for what really matters. There is also a type of silence that builds value because the less you make yourself overly available, the more people start to appreciate your presence when they have it. And when you stop being the one who always initiates, always explains, always shows up, no matter how you're treated, the other person has to face the reality of your absence. And that reality forces them to think differently because silence can't be ignored forever. It makes people feel the emptiness they created. And sometimes that absence teaches them more than your presence ever did, because now they realize what life looks like without your voice, without your energy, without your consistency. Keeping silence powerful also teaches you patience, because when you don't rush to speak or react, you give yourself time to process, to think clearly, to choose wisely, and that patience saves you from regrets. Because how many times have people said something in the heat of the moment and wished they could take it back? But when you master silence, you don't have to backtrack. You don't have to clean up words that shouldn't have been said. You remain in control, and that control is priceless because it keeps you from letting temporary emotions cause permanent damage. It's important to understand that silence doesn't mean weakness. It doesn't mean you don't care. It doesn't mean you're ignoring the problem. It means you're choosing not to waste your energy in places where it won't be valued. And you're trusting that truth always reveals itself because sooner or later, actions always show more than words. And while other people may talk circles around lies, you sitting back in silence allows the truth to unfold naturally. And in the end, people will always remember who held their composure versus who couldn't control their mouth. When you keep your silence powerful, you elevate yourself because not everyone deserves access to your thoughts. Not everyone has earned the right to know your feelings, and not everyone should be given the gift of your explanation. So you learn to pick your moments carefully. You learn to let your silence carry weight, and you learn that when you remove your voice, your presence becomes louder, your respect grows stronger, and your value becomes clearer. Because silence, when used with wisdom, is not emptiness, it is authority. Make him earn access because when you give everything too easily, when you open every door without requiring effort, you remove the value that comes with truly being connected to you, and people tend to misuse what they didn't work for. So the same way a person appreciates something they had to fight for, they will respect you more when they know access to your time, your heart, and your energy is not free. And this is not about being cold or playing games, it's about understanding that you are a prize. And prizes are not handed out to just anybody who shows up. They are earned through consistency, through respect, through real actions that prove intentions are solid. Because if somebody really wants you, they won't mind putting in the effort to show it. When you make him earn access, you're protecting yourself from disappointment because people who come into your life without effort will leave just as quickly since they had nothing invested. But when somebody has to work for your time, when they have to prove their place through their actions, they value what they've built and they won't throw it away lightly. And this is why setting boundaries is so critical, because boundaries are not walls to keep people out. They are checkpoints to prove who deserves to come in. And when someone meets those checkpoints with consistency, then you know you are dealing with someone serious and not someone temporary.